Tom Cotton. Welcome back, Senator.
Thanks, Shannon. Good to be on with you.
Okay, so in the Washington Post, Rebecca Breyer writes this: the Emancipation Memorial was funded by newly freed slaves, but they had no voice in the process of creating the monument, and their voices and work are lost in the story the memorial now conveys. For people who aren't familiar, it has President Lincoln and a man who is believed to be a slave who is kneeling and rising up. And people say, listen, he should never have been in that position where Lincoln appears that simply by, putting his name on a piece of paper, he ended the struggle of the slaves and all that they had been through. So some folks say, listen, it's time for it to go.
Well, Shannon, that memorial celebrates emancipation from slavery in this country. And it was more than just Lincoln's signature on a piece of paper. It was the deaths of 600,000 Americans who fought to help live up to our founding creed that all men are created equal in the eyes of God. And as you say, that memorial was paid for by freed slaves. Frederick Douglass helped to introduce it when it was unveiled. Whatever you think of that memorial, though, I think everyone can agree that we cannot allow violent mobs to threaten to tear down memorials, monuments, and statues. And the president is absolutely right that the federal government has a duty to defend all of its property. The state and the local governments do as well. Unfortunately, a lot of them are not doing such a good job of it.
Well, we've seen a lot of destruction. We have seen peaceful protests, and a lot of those folks feel like their message is being drowned out. But there are others like Hank Newsom. He is part of the New York leadership of Black Lives Matter, was on with Martha last night, and here is what he said. It's getting a lot of attention.
If this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it, all right? And I could be speaking figuratively. Okay. I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation.
That's Hawk Newsom, who was speaking with Martha last night. So he says you can take it literally or figuratively. It's up to you to interpret. But some folks would be very worried to interpret that literally.
Well, if you interpret it literally, it is a threat to commit violence against law-abiding citizens and destroy property. But what we all want is equal justice under the law. And I don't think it helps to talk about burning down a system, even metaphorically, when our system, founded on the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, is the best system devised by man to help deliver equal justice to all. Now, of course, we haven't always lived up to that founding creed, and we continue the work of our ancestors to build a more perfect union. The right way to do so is to help uphold the rights of all Americans, to respect the rule of law, to work through our constitutional system to try to effect change. It's not to burn down property and threaten lives in the streets.
Well, part of what there was, it seemed, a moment of working together on Capitol Hill was about police reform, and yet there are two very different bills. The Democrats blocked your efforts, the GOP, in the Senate to even get to a debate on that. Here is what House member Jerry Nadler said about the bill over on the Senate side.
The Senate bill is sham fake reform. The Republicans in the Senate cannot be allowed and will not be allowed to thwart the will of the country.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said essentially Republicans are trying to get away with, her words, murder, the murder of George Floyd, and that your bill had no teeth.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't take the word of Jerry Nadler on the need for police reform and the kinds of reforms we need. I would take the word of Senator Tim Scott, who has acted like a true statesman in the finest keeping of the traditions of the Senate over the last 2 weeks. I think it's very regrettable that all but 3 Democrats refused to join with us merely to start debate in the Senate this week. Again, this wasn't about passing a bill and sending to the Senate with which they disagreed. This was about simply starting the debate and offering amendments and having votes to improve the bill that Senator Scott and a handful of other senators had drafted. Yet the Democrats refused to do even that. Maybe they think that this is a good political issue for them in November. If they want to campaign on not delivering results except for defunding the police, I will welcome that campaign.
Okay, speaking of campaigns, there are numerous reports that there are whispers that GOP senators are very nervous about what the president is doing, about the polls that are definitely not positive for him. And this is what Senator John Thune, of course, Republican, had to say about the president potentially working on the tone of his message.
I think he can win those back. probably require not only a message that deals with substance and policy, but I think a message that conveys perhaps different tones.
Senator, I think at this point we all agree that the president is very confident in the way that he tackles things, the way that he goes about them, and his strategy. Is he going to be open to a conversation about changing his tone or doing anything differently when this is what apparently got him to the White House first time around?
Well, Shannon, I think as we get back to something more like normal around the country, as we get deeper into the campaign, more Americans are going to be thinking about their future. America has taken some pretty hard hits this year, from the coronavirus to the economic recession, now to the protests, some of which have been hijacked by rioters in our streets. They're going to be looking for a president who can lead for the future, who can help rebuild the economy that we had under the first 3 years of President Trump, not the sluggish, slow-growth economy we had for 8 years under the Obama-Biden administration, and a president who can protect the basic rights and safety of all of our citizens, not one who is silent in the face of mob violence in our streets. When the American people look at that contrast between President Trump and Joe Biden, I think that the president will win once again, because he will win their confidence that he can preside over a strong, growing economy and safe streets.
All right, we shall see just a few short months from now. Senator Tom Cotton, thanks for your time. Always good to have you.
Thank you.